Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the learning of Torah Hashem, Be'ezus Hashem Yisbarach. As always, we start with appreciation to TorahAnytime.com for giving us this amazing worldwide platform to be Meikaitz Torah, to Kol HaLashon for its global network, to Torah Communications Network, to our Zoomers, everybody here in our flagship station of the Agudas Yisrael Beis Zev of Fairways, and all the other venues that carry this shir. We are sponsored tonight by Mr. and Mrs. Ruvain Lipsky, L'Refuah Shalema for Ruvain Ben Tema, and appreciation to the shir. Also by Dr. and Mrs. Block, who is sponsoring the shir for my Refuah Shalema, for my continued health and well-being, Moshe Meir Ben Esther Fradel. Thank you very, very much. If you would like to sponsor a shir, 718-916-3100, rmmwsi@aol.com. The parasha tells us, and a Freilich Chanukah, everyone, there will be a Chanukah shir. That will be tomorrow. We will have for the Shabbos Chanukah table. It says in the parasha, "Va'ato yeira paro." Va'ato yeira paro, ish novoin v'chacham. And now Yosef says Paro should seek a man who is understanding and wise, v'yishiseyu al eretz Mitzrayim, and point him over the land of Egypt. So everybody asks the question, Mamish, everybody asks, who appointed Yosef HaTzadik to be Paro's advisor? You know, in those days, if you spoke when you weren't spoken to the monarch, off with your head. Yosef was asked to interpret the dream. So he interpreted the dream that there's going to be 7 years of plenty, there's going to be 7 years of famine. Who asked you anything else? Who asked you for anything more? So the Ramban, first of all, the great Rebbe Ezra Etya says a very clever answer. He says that you have to put in a comma. And that is, Paro, when he heard the explanation, he said to him one word, Va'ata, Ata with an ayin, Va'ata, and now? What's up now? Okay, so Paro asked him, and now? So Yosef gave him an answer. Yeira Paro, Yishnav V'chasam, V'yishisei Wal Eretz Mitzrayim. That's the way Rebbe Ezra Etya, the great Rosh Hashiva, learns. The Ramban has a very straightforward explanation. The Ramban says that Yosef saw this embedded in the dream itself. Very ingenious. The Ramban doesn't need my askana. The Ramban says that part of the dream was that the parois harois, the emaciated cows, oichlois hatoivos, they ate the good cows. So we interpret that simply that it means that when the 7 years of famine would come, it would so wipe out the plenty that the remembrance of the plenty is gone. It's all eaten up. It's all consumed. But the Ramban says Yosef saw differently. The Ramban says that the vision of the parois harois eating the healthy cows is that during the years of health, during the years of plenty, you should put away food for the bad years so that it'll be during the time of the bad years, there'll be the good cows. And that's the symbolism of the bad cows eating the good cows. That it should be there at the time of famine because they'll have saved it and put it away so that you'll be able to have it even in the time of the famine. And therefore, that's why Yosef said, you got to appoint somebody to put it away in order that that part of the dream should be fulfilled. But You know, one of the incredible Gaonim, the really incredible Gaonim in the previous generation in Eretz Yisrael, when I say previous, I mean previous to my youth, was the great Maril Diskin, Rabbi Yeshua Leib Diskin. He was mamish, an exceptional guy, Zechet Tzadik Livracha, Schusi Yagan Aleinu. He says such an incredible pshat over here. He says, Yosef was addressing to Paro, I know, Paro, you have a question on my interpretation. And that's why didn't it stagnine Paro? Why didn't the astrologers of Paro, you know, you have a lot of faith. We know that Paro had a lot of faith in the stagnine Paro, right? They told him that there would be born a Moshiach Shel Yisrael, a leader of Klal Yisrael. That's why later on he would drown all the babies. So Yosef addressed Paro's unasked question. I know you're going to want to know, why didn't your Khatumim, why didn't your stargazers see this explanation? So Yosef told them, you know why? Because they didn't see in the stars the 7 years of famine. Because you're going to appoint someone who's going to put away food and who's going to make sure that there's not going to be 7 years of famine. And that's why they didn't see it in the stars. And you know why you didn't see 7 years of plenty? Because there's not going to be that much plenty, because we're going to restrict the usage to save it for the 7 years of famine. So that's why they didn't see 7 years of plenty, because we're going to ration. Now Yosef didn't tell them, but the Maril Diskin adds, there's another reason why the stargazers didn't see it. The other reason that stargazers didn't see it is because there wouldn't be 7 years of famine, because when Yaakov came down to Mitzrayim, the famine stopped. It was only really 2 years of famine. But he didn't go into that. He didn't go into Yaakov coming, because he didn't reveal his identity, that he was Yaakov's son. We're going to see, as the Shir proceeds, that there were many, many, many details in these dreams. Many, many lessons. There came out of the Nile 7 cows. They were handsome. They were good looking. Ubriya is basa. And they were zaftig. They were robust. They were zaftig. So, where does handsome come in? Handsome cows. I mean, the idea is they represented years of plenty. What's the message? That they look good. You know, you could put it on the cover of Cows Illustrated. You know, good looking cow. What's the? There's a very, very fascinating Rashi. It shows you how this goes beyond Mitzrayim. These dreams are for the millennia. They're not only for the Egyptian Pharaoh and the Egyptian situation. Rashi is troubled. What's this handsome cows? So Rashi says, Simin hu liyamei hasoiva. It's a sign of times of plenty. Shabriya is nearest yafa zu. That's when people look nicely at one another. That's when people smile at one another. She'ein ayin beryat tzara b'chaverta. People are not envious and jealous and begrudging of what other people have. There's plenty to go around. The good-looking cow represents that in a time of plenty, people get along with one another. In a time with a shortage, the person who can't pay his tuition, the person who's having trouble paying his mortgage, sees another person who's driving a fancy car, and he looks at him with not a good eye. Now, I have to tell you that when I saw this Rashi, I immediately thought about how troubling the situation is today in Eretz Yisrael. First of all, the economy, which runs over there on tourism. All the hotels, all the restaurants, all the taxi drivers, they're all mamish struggling and suffering. Taxi drivers that still have to pay the lease on their expensive taxi. They still have to pay the arnuna, the tax, on being able to be a taxi driver. And they go around, there's nobody to pick up from the airport. There's nobody that's going to restaurants. The restaurants are choking. And that's just the beginning. The thousands of families who reservists are at war, and they're not at home making money, and their parnassus are falling apart. That causes a very big problem, not only in the economic structure, but in the achdus of everyone. People are not eyeing one another pleasantly. And right away, the very first thing that you think is that we have to have this in mind when we say Shim Shalom. Aleinu val kol Yisrael amecha. Please Hashem, let there be Shalom. I know it's tough. I know when there's not panasa, it says Anoisen gevuleich Shalom chelav chitim yazbiech. When is in their borders peace? When there's enough chelav chitim, when there's enough, cookies in the cookie jar. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tosim after daven. Also, in the Sefer Leitivcha B'Achrisecha, he says, you see that when it says over here, your face mara, it's not really referring to good looks. It's referring to midas tovos, how people behave with one another. And he says an interesting thing. He says that in shidduchim, people look for good looks. The real good looks is midas tovos. Now, of course, good looks is important. Good looks are important. Somebody's going to deny that they need good looks and then wake up after they're married and be unhappy about that. That's a disaster. I've seen that happen. But somebody that marries just for money and good looks can very quickly head to the divorce court. While good looks and money are good add-ons, it's the midas tovos that's the ikar. I'll tell over a story, although it's for a person on a very high level, not for us, definitely not for me. I got married twice. After my first wife passed away, I got married again. Each time, I wanted to have a pretty girl. I'm not saying not that way. But that can't be what you're, that can't be the main thing. They say over, though, that Rabbi Yeshaya Fink, his Rebbetzin, she made it her business that every Sukkot she would search around to get her husband the most beautiful esrog. It was by her, like, she was extremely dedicated. Somebody once asked her, you know, there's so many things, how come she's so dedicated to get her husband the most beautiful esrog? So she's told the story that when they read a shidduch for her to the great Rabbi Yeshaya Fink, so the shadchan said she's a meyuchses, she's a balas midas tovus ma'id, but the external is, you know, nothing special. So Rav Fink's answer was, the only place we find that we look at the external is by an esrog. That's what it says. There you need a hodder. So she said that she made sure that she would always get her husband a beautiful esrog. It's just an interesting vignette. Talking about relative beauty, I wanted to mention something else. Rabbi Yashiv, in his last years, Rabbi Yashiv would always do an exhaustive bedikas comments. In his last years, he couldn't get down on the floor, so one of his grandchildren helped him. And when he finished, the grandchild got up, the Einikel got up and started brushing the dust off his jacket. So Rabbi Yashiv said, stop. So he said, Zaidi, it's lichluch, it's dirty. He says, that's not dirt, that's shorei mitzvah. That's remnants of a mitzvah. You went on the floor for bedikas chametz. That's not dirt. It's all relative. It's like people say, you better send your kittel to the cleaners, it has wine on it. Wine from the Seder? Is that dirt? There was a great Rebbe who, on the ceiling, over his Hanukkah menorah, there was smoke. They wanted to paint it over. He said, what do you mean? That smoke reminds us of Hanukkah the whole year. It's all relative. I just had tonight that, just tonight, I was speaking to one of my very close friends whose father is very aged and he's bleeding. And he was, taking care of the blood, and he went to shul and somebody told him there's blood all over his shirt. So I told him, I said to him this, I said, that blood is blood of kibbut avim. That's very special blood. Now, if you look, you'll see, it said every detail of the dreams. It says that Paro says the cows were so emaciated. I never saw such cows. I inspected my realm. I never saw such emaciated cows. So we think it simply means that the famine will be one that was never seen. But the Mefarshim say there's a sefer called Peh Kodesh. One might think that maybe the dream is not significant. Paro was just thinking about what he was thinking during the day. That's what happens. People dream about what they think about during the day. So Paro added, it couldn't be that way, because I never saw such cows. Never saw such a thing. V'nei sheva paros acheros, oilos achreim mina yar. 7 other cows came out. Ro'os marev dakos basar. Right? They looked bad, because that's the other side of the coin. People look begrudgingly at people when there's famine. V'daka is baser, and emaciated. V'tamoyna eitz lapareis al svasayar. And they had a convention. The 7 good cows and the 7 bad cows stood together by the yar. So Rav Twersky, in his Sefer on Chumash, Rabbi Dr. Twersky, Zech Tzadik V'Rachas, Chutz Yorgan Aleinu, says, well, we know that the bad cows would eat the good cows. But what's the message in the 7 good cows and the 7 bad cows standing together, almost posing by the yar? What's the message in that? I always learned that it's just prefatory that the bad cows ate the good cows, so they had to be standing together in order for them to eat them. But Rabbi Twersky says something else. Bad happens when the good people are together with the bad people. It's a reminder once again, we spoke about this in the last 2 shiurim. It's a reminder once again that a person has to be careful who they hang around with. It's a reminder. Bad happens because the good cows were together with the bad cows. This is the time of the year where if you have a child in 8th grade, you're deciding what high school to send your child to. And people have different variables that they require. Some people are very much into academics. There should be good academics. I want my child to have a future. Other people want to have the best rebbeim. They want their child to learn the proper lumdus. These things are all important. But there's one variable that is extremely important. And that is, who are your children going to be hanging around with? Are the boys in the 9th grade vaping? You can find that out very easily. Is that the peer structure you want for your child? What kind of children? And by the way, it's not only the children. I know somebody that complained to me that his son started smoking. So I found out that the Rebbe in the Beis Medrash smokes. You can't expect that your child should be more than his Rebbe. You have to know what the sviva is. That's absolutely important when making a decision. I don't have to talk more about this. Dai lechakima beremiza. Va'ata, and now Yeira Paro ish novan v'chacham. Paro should find a man who is understanding and wise. So Reb Elia Lapyan, the great Reb Elia Lapyan, says, Zechat Tzadik V'Vrachas, Chutz Yorgan Aleinu. Reb Elia Lapyan says, I would think that he should look for somebody that's Mesudar V'Zaras. Somebody that's very Mesudar, that's very orderly. He's going to set up a system, and energetic, not lazy. But no, you need a chacham. Because most people in the time of plenty cannot see with a clarity to the future. The Gemara tells us, Ezel Chacham Haroyes Hanoilad. Someone who has foresight. That's a special skill set to have foresight. You know, they say that they did a test on children and they offered to a child a handful of M&Ms right now or a big fat bag with 10 handfuls at the end of the month. And 90% of the children took the handful now. Being royas hanoilad, having foresight, is a great chachma. Paro understood you needed to have somebody who had this koyach of foresight. It says most of the goyim choshvin al harega, think about the moment. They don't look at ahead. We know success in Yiddishkeit is a person who is able to look beyond now. Like it says, Olam hazeh domeh leprosdor lifnei olam haba. This world is a hallway to the next world. To view this world just as a hallway is a very big challenge. A hallway? You know, you don't even have any decorations in the hallway. It's a hallway. Just to get to the room. This room is just a hallway. But somebody has to have incredible foresight for that. You know, it says about Moshe Rabbeinu, Chacham leiv yikach mitzvahs. That while everybody else was taking all the wealth, he went to get Yosef's body. But everybody else was busy becoming billionaires. A person in this world has to be a Chacham leiv. It's not easy. Not easy. Well, a lot of people, when they get to the next world, they'll find out that I can't believe I could have been, whoa, if I would have used my time wisely. If I would have been a Chacham leiv. Not only that, we're told to have the vision. We're told that we should have the vision to think about that we're going to be l'fnei mi ata osid litain din v'cheshbon. Before who we're going to give an accounting. There's a pasuk. It's a chilling pasuk. It doesn't sound so scary, but it's a chilling pasuk. Limnos yameinu kain hoda. You should know how to count your days. V'novi levav chachma, and that will bring to a heart of wisdom. Now, that doesn't sound. We all know what a birthday is. That's wise. So the great Rav Irving Bunim, Zechat Tzadik Levrachas, Chusi Yagan Aleinu, he says, when you see a sign on a highway, it doesn't tell you how many miles you traveled. It tells you how many miles you have to Monticello, how many miles you have to Binghamton, how many miles you have to Syracuse. Says Reb Irving Bunim, L'mnois yameinu kain haida. If a person knows to count, how many years do you have left? Ooh. Then v'novi levav chachma. That's a heart of wisdom. That's a person that's royas hanoilad. They say even more chilling, Cain is b'gematria 70. You may say, he's saying to Shivim Shana, how many years do you have left to 70? Whoa. How many good years do you have left? Use them. They say over that, Reb Elia Lapian used to look down at his beard. And if he saw gray, he said, already half my life passed me by. I better get cracking. Say Rav Miller after 60 said we have to prepare. We have to prepare for the great Bechina. They say that in the hospital, when he was in the hospital, he was reviewing a piece of a K'tzais HaChoshen. He says that's what he's going to tell Hashem when he gives him a Bechina. People got ready. They're Chachamim. So Paro knew that he's going to have to get an Ish Chacham. Yeah. This, of course, is a great Hanukkah message. I felt a little guilty. I was thinking about maybe I should have spoke a little bit more about Hanukkah tonight. It is, after all, Hanukkah, the first night of Hanukkah. We know when we look at the Hanukkah menorah, when we look at the Neiros, so there are a total, if you count 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, the total is 36. 36 candles. And the Rekeach says the 36 candles represent the 36 hours that Adam and Chava enjoyed the light of Gan Eden until they were kicked out. Because they had 12 hours on Friday and 24 hours on Shabbos. There was no darkness in Gan Eden. That's why it doesn't say Vayer Vayevoker Yom HaShvi. So it's 12 hours of light on Friday and 24 hours of light on Shabbos. That's 36 hours in Olam Haba. And when we look at the 36 candles, they say if you look at the light and gaze at the light, you see the Aragonas, the hidden light. But the idea is that looking at it, we look at the true light. And that's the light to bear in mind and to prepare for the afterlife. Yavan, Greece, the Syrian Greeks, Yavan, Yud Vav Nun, is the same letters as Noi, beauty. Yavan represents the Olympic beauty, the incredible beauty of Greece. But that's just a cloak, because the real beauty is the beauty of the afterlife. And that's the true light. And that's Chachma. That's wisdom. If a person is able to look ahead. And Chapa Mitzvah. Chapa Mitzvah, Amen, opens up all the gates of Gan Eden. What an Amen is worth. Just to share with you two very quick vignettes. One is about Reb Heschel, the father of the great Shach. So they say that when Reb Heschel was a child, he stole the Afikomen. So he came to the Afikomen, and his father asked each child, "Do you have the Afikomen?" "No." "You have the Afikomen?" "No." "You have the Afikomen?" "No." He came to Reb Heschel, "You have the Afikomen?" "Yes." So he said, "What do you want?" He said he wants a silk bekisha. Okay? So the father says, "Okay, let me have the Afikomen." Now it's softened. So the father starts giving out the pieces. Comes to Reb Heschel. He says, "Tati, give me my piece." He says, "No. I'll give you a piece if you meichel me for the kapata. If you meichel me for the silk bekisha." So Reb Heschel smiles and takes from under a napkin a piece of Afikomen. He saved himself a piece, just in case his father would do that. He says, that's a chachma. That's Reyes HaNoiled. Now, by the way, it's a good story. There's a big kasha. How could the father withhold an Afikomen from his son? Stealing the Afikomen is part of the Seder ritual. But the father is mechuyev to give his son a piece of Afikomen. Okay, but ain't shoylin ala drush. You don't ask a question. Tell you another ma'aseh of Reyes HaNoiled. Rabbi Kiva Eger had a great son, Rabbi Shlomo Eger. It's also a gaon. Reb Shlomo Eger's mechutin, his father-in-law, was dying. He left at Tzava a will that the first one of the children to have a child and name it after him would get a certain big amount of money. Reb Shlomo Eger was married to one of his daughters, and they had the first child, and they named it after the mechut. Unfortunately, the child died within 30 days. Then another daughter had a child, and they also gave the name. Came the question, who gets the money? So, of course, these are Elach Yidden. They went to a Din Torah. They went to the famous Chem de Shloima from Warsaw, from Varsha. So the Chem de Shloima said, give me 30 days. After 30 days, he paskined against Reb Shlomo Eger, and he said that the money goes to the other daughter who had the child that lived. So, of course, Reb Shlomo Eger is going to accept the psak of the Chem de Shloima, but he asked him, did the Rav ask my great father? Kiva Eger was the Gadol Hador. He wanted to know if the Rav asked Rabbi Kiva Eger. Now, just you should know, Chem de Shloima, how much reverence he had for Rabbi Kiva Eger. When Rabbi Kiva Eger came to visit Warsaw, he said that everybody should light candles in their home in honor of Rabbi Kiva Eger, and everybody should take off work to greet Rabbi Kiva Eger. So the Chem de Shloima smiled and said, why do you think I asked for 30 days? And he takes out a letter that he sent right away the question to Rabbi Kiva Eger, not telling it was about his son, to get Rabbi Kiva Eger's psak, because he knew Rabbi Shlomo Eger was going to ask him. That's a chacham who's reyes hanoilad. By the way, this discipline in life is one of the great keys of success in life. Of course, I introduced it as thinking about the afterlife, but it's not only thinking about the afterlife. It has to do with shalom bayis. There are people that say to their spouse what makes sense to them at the moment, and it might make sense at the moment. But if they think about the fact that if they say it, they're going to have a sour night, then they'll think twice. You have to be reyes hanoilad. I always say, in marriage, winners are losers. What do you mean winners are losers? You might win the fight, you're stuck with the loser the whole weekend. So winners are losers. That's being reyes hanoilad. Reyes hanoilad is teaching the children to save money. And not that just if they have a little extra money, so now they could go and eat out, and now they could go and do this. I mean, that's a good idea once in a while to eat out. But they have to save. They have to make weddings. They have to learn to look ahead. In the formative years, you have to look ahead. How am I going to be able to support a family? Person has to be reyes hanoilad. One of the ways to teach this discipline, in my view, is to teach a child how to play chess. A child who learns how to play chess and learns how to look ahead a few moves is learning the discipline of looking ahead. Very important thing. Vatchilena sheva shnei arav lavoi kasher ama Yosef. And the 7 years of famine came, like Yosef says. Reb Leibel Katz said, Tzadik Lebracha Tzchus Yagan Eleinu, in the Zohar Aryeh makes a very fascinating observation. The years of famine came first. But it doesn't say that when the 7 years of famine came, it came Kasher Ama Yosef. It doesn't say that. It only says when the 7 years of famine came, it came Kasher Ama Yosef. Why doesn't it say when the 7 years of famine came? It's like Yosef said. The little cat says an extraordinary answer. He says when a Jew does a bad thing, people talk about it. When a Jew does a good thing, they don't talk about it. All the Jewish accomplishments you won't find in the papers. But if there's one Jew somewhere that does something, I remember that there was one Jew that was by a bad conference. It was a conference of Znus. There was one Jew there. So the paper carried a picture of a Jew at that conference. That the paper will carry. The accomplishments of Jews, their inventions, their medical advances, all the things that Jews do, that's not talked about. Now that sounds very unfair. But the truth of the matter is we're guilty of that too. Because all the things that Hashem does for us, all the good things, we don't make mention of it. But if something goes wrong, what did Hashem do to me? What about all the good things? Now we do make brachas, we say birchas hashachar, but we have to, my eyes work without floaters. I could stand straight without an inner ear problem, without vertigo. Everything's working properly. I have to say thank you. That's also Hanukkah. Right? They came to the next year and they felt the fabric of time and they said, what's in the fabric of time of Hanukkah? Hanukkah is the Jewish Thanksgiving. So they pulled Yosef out of the bar. He shaved, changed his clothing. The Mamloyes and others say this, it's a very practical lesson. If a person has to prepare before coming before a human monarch, how much do we have to prepare before coming to davening to Hashem? It says, Hi kun likras elikecha Yisrael. So the Mashal Rabbi Yoshev paskined that if you're coming in from the rain and you have a plastic over your hat or over your shtreimel, you're not allowed to daven Shemona Esrei with that plastic on. If you're standing before the Melech, you take off the plastic from your hat. You know, they say a story. It's in the biography of Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky. In the biography of Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, it says that Rabbi Yaakov had on Purim a mincha in his house. And a person came in a Big Bird costume. Big Bird, those that know Big Bird from Sesame Street, right? Big Bird with a big yellow beak, orange. Rabbi Yaakov looked him up and down, and said, Epis felt von hikun likras elikecha Yisrael. Something is lacking from preparing to greet your God, O Israel. Of course, this is an argument to wear a gartel. So I have a minig I keep in my talis bag, a yarmulke. And I switch yarmulkes. So I do something special. There are people that make sure to wash their hands before davening. They do some kind of preparation. And this is, of course, important. People sometimes come running in right after playing ball. They're all drenched in sweat, wearing a t-shirt. That's not a way to daven mincha. Right? That's what we learn out from here. By the way, there is a incredible gematria over here. This gematria I saw in the Sefer Leitivcha B'Achrisecha. Vayachalov Simloisov is gematria 926 exactly, and Bechad B'Tishrei is 926, the first of Tishrei, because Yosef was taken out of the jail on Rosh Hashanah. That's right there in the gematria. I will say that my first Rebbitzon's sister's son, Ari Rosenfeld, the gag order was lifted, so now everybody knows that he's the one in jail for passing something to the prime minister. He's a young boy of 30 with a wife and a child. He did only something that he thought was for the benefit of Klal Yisrael. He's embroiled in an argument between the right and left. Should be a school of Hanukkah, the school of this week's parasha of Yosef being taken out of the jail, that he should be able to be returned to his family. Amen. Paro said, V'ani shamati elecha leimar. I heard about you that it said that tishma chaloim liftar oisai, that you know how to listen to a dream and interpret it. Yosef's response was immediate. Biladai. Nothing to do with me. Elokim yanesh loim Paro. Hashem will answer Paro. This was Yosef HaTzadik. Yosef didn't take credit. Biladai. You contrast this to the Malachim that destroyed Sdom, and they said, Mashchisim anachnu, we're destroying Sdom. And it says they were banished from Hashem for 128 years. This is the reason why Yosef, it says Yosef was Ole Ayin. He was above the Ayin Hara. It says that Yosef is invincible to the Ayin Hara. Ayin Hara comes when Hashem gives us something and we flaunt it and it causes other people pain. So Hashem says, I'm going to take it away from you. Yosef didn't take credit for anything. Biladai. It's not me. This is a way of life. You know, they say that if when you write a letter, you find that you write often the word I, it's not a good sign. I. I is ay. That's ay. I. It's Hashem. And by the way, that's the solution to Gaiva. It's not me, it's what Hashem gave me. Hashem gave it to me, so I have responsibilities. A person that says I is ay. That's a person in trouble. Vayeshvu, they sat, vayishkeru imay, and they got drunk together with Yosef. This is the meeting before Yosef sends them away. So they drank. Now the Gemara in Shabbos says, in Daf Kuf Lamed Tes, that all the time that Yosef was away, they never drank wine. Shouldn't think they say, we got rid of that troublemaker. All the years, 22 years, they never drank wine. Wine was a great joy in those days. They never drank wine. It's the first time they drank wine. Why did they drink wine over here? They didn't know it was Yosef yet. Why did they drink wine? So the Al-Shech HaKadosh says that they drank wine because they thought that Yosef was still trying to check if there were spies. And he tried to ply them with wine to get out their secrets. And they were afraid that if they would decline the wine, Yosef would think that they were hiding something. So therefore they had to drink the wine. That's the way the Al-Shech learns. But I found another answer that asks a question. I had this question for 42 years. Another question. I had a question. When the brothers left the second time, and they got caught because they planted the goblet in Binyamin's sack, why did they leave without checking their sacks? They knew the last time that money was put back in the sacks. Now when they left the second time, they should have certainly checked their sacks to see if there was anything suspicious. Yet they went without checking their sacks. Doesn't make sense. I know if somebody put something in my suitcase the first time, the next time I'm leaving, I'm checking my suitcases. This question always bothered me. I finally found it in the Paneach Rosa. It's a Rishon that I quote, one of my favorite Rishonim. The Paneach Rosa says that's why Yosef plied them with wine. He got them drunk so that they shouldn't check. So they went to sleep, they didn't check because they were drunk. In the morning they were hungover and he rushed them out. He said, hurry up, go, bring back your younger brother. They were hungover. So they didn't do it because they were drinking wine. Now, before we continue, Hanukkah, by the way, is a great time to think about adding to learning. We're learning this fantastic Masechta of Sanhedrin. It's not too late to join us in the Daf Yomi. If you want to join our Daf Yomi, it's a family of Zoomers, and it's at 8 o'clock, and you come on by going to zoomdaf.com and putting in the meeting code 914408. 914408. Also, be on the lookout for a share that will be posted tomorrow, Be'ezus Hashem, for the Shabbos Chanukah table. And if anybody wants to be a sponsor of these Chumash Shiurim, we thank our two sponsors tonight, Mr. and Mrs. Ruvain Lipsky, for Shalema for Ruvain Ben Tema, Dr. and Mrs. Block for Myra for Shalema, Moshe Meir Ben Esther Fadl, and our Kos HaToy for the share. If you want to sponsor a share, 718-916-3100, rmmwsi@aol.com. So we know that Yosef accused them, meraglim at him, your spies. Later on, he accused them of stealing, right? Because the money was found in their sacks. So they said when they found money in their sacks, they said, "Mazo isasa likim lanu." What did Hashem do to us? Reb Shlomo Kluger asks, they weren't bothered when they were accused as spies. Why did Hashem do this to us? But when they found the money, now they didn't take that money. When they found their money, they asked, Mazo isasa Hashem lanu. What's Hashem doing this for? So Reb Shlomo Kluger wonders, why didn't they say that in the beginning? Now, you could say that they weren't shocked at the accusation that they were spies, because we know that it says that all 10 of them entered from 10 different entrances into Egypt. Now, they did it because they were looking for Yosef, or they did it because since they were such a robust and healthy family, they want an ayin hara. But it sure looked like they were spying the land. It looked suspicious. Why would one family enter through 10 different checkpoints? So that they weren't surprised. To find money in their bags, that they were surprised. Why are they putting the money back in their bags? The Alshich says a different reason. The Alshich says that they were accused of spies that they said, we deserve. Mida keneged mida. We accused Yosef of spying on us and reporting to our father. So we deserve to be called spies. That's mida keneged mida. That we understand. But money returned back into our sacks? That doesn't make sense. Why'd we deserve that? That's the way Reb Shlomo Kluger learns. Truth of the matter, though, is that they also deserved to be called thieves. Because they stole Yosef. They sold him into slavery and got money for it. They stole the Kshenis Pasim, the Crayola cloak. So they also deserve this Mida Keneged Mida also. I want to really thank everybody for joining us for this year and taking off for your time on Hanukkah to learn with us. Thank you. Everybody should have a Freilich and Hanukkah and a Guten Shabbos.